Um, my name is Rajiv Prasad, and I am here on behalf of the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago, where I hold the position of Vice President. I am indeed very happy to be asked to introduce and to um, present this afternoon, um, merely because it is for us at the Law Association a great pleasure to have this opportunity to collaborate with the Faculty of Law on this, what I hope will be an annual, we are calling it an annual lecture series. This is the first year that this collaboration between the Law Association and the Faculty of Law is taking place. And we are really grateful for Dean of the Faculty of Law, Professor Heffron, for reaching out to us, getting in contact and encouraging this collaboration. So we are very excited about the not only this project, but also other projects that are in the pipeline that we are looking forward to roll out in the not too distant future. As for today, we are here to talk about career development of the modern lawyer of tomorrow. And we are extremely fortunate to have with us this afternoon Justice of Appeal Gillian Lucky, who is going to be presenting um, on a career for the ages. And I am looking forward to it. I have known Justice of Appeal Lucky for many, many years. Without giving away too much, um, I have been practicing 25 years, and I considered Justice of Appeal Lucky my senior when we were both practicing. And although she does not look anything like that to suggest, so you can disbelieve me and just say his maths is probably not very good, because I know it's always said of lawyers that maths is not their strong point, but maybe that is changing. Why why is Justice of Appeal Lucky, um, in my view, the best person to speak about this topic? Well, I'll tell you why. When I started practicing many years ago, I recall Justice of Appeal Lucky in those days started off in traditional law firm. Now, many of us over the years will probably start our career in one particular area, and more often than not, we stick in that particular area. But over the years, Justice Lucky has been able to transcend all sorts of different positions, starting off in practice in a law firm, moving to the Director of Public Prosecutions Office, where she was there for many, many years, ending up in her own private practice and being one of the founding partners of Alpha Chambers, one of the top criminal legal chambers in Trinidad and Tobago, where she practiced as a private practitioner. Subject to correction, my recollection was Justice of Appeal Lucky then moved on to the bench sometime in 2009, where she spent a year. And then, after taking a year in the judiciary, a completely different position from private practice, Justice of Appeal Lucky moved on to the Police Complaints Authority and then returned to the bench. All this time, spending significant amount of time doing legal teaching or teaching in the legal area. And I have this story that I think the first time I interacted with Justice Lucky was that we were competing. Um, I was teaching in one school in San Fernando doing the Bachelor of Laws degree, and Justice P. Lucky was also teaching in another school. And that's quite a that's I'm going to say 1 or 2 decades ago, and you know that ability to transcend not only into private practice, working in the firms, working in the public sector, going on the bench, teaching, just shows you the diversity. And that's not to mention the question of working as chair of the Police Complaints Authority, getting that opportunity to see and work with lawyers at all different stages. And the point I want to make to you, and I'm sure it will be developed in the course of the presentation, is that lawyers have always and will continue to play a very important role. Much is said about the legal profession, but what is not really emphasized is how critical and important attorneys at law are in the development of our society. It's not only a question of whether somebody who's trained in law becomes a politician. It's not a question of whether or not you turn out to be a lawyer that everybody knows your name. In every aspect of life, lawyers play a role, and they play an important role. And before I invite Justice of Appeal Lucky, I just want to say this, that lawyers and the profession that you all have chosen is a very noble profession. And it is one that, if done correctly, can make a lasting impression on the society. And, we are very happy to collaborate, the Law Association, with the Faculty of Law and introduce and welcome Justice of Appeal Lucky to speak to you on a career for the ages. Look forward to it. And Justice of Appeal Lucky, I hand it over to you.
Thank you very much, moderator, for this afternoon. My good friend, Mr. Rajiv Prasad. Good afternoon to the Dean of the Faculty of Law, Professor Heffron, all my colleagues at the Faculty of Law, and all the administrative and support staff. And I say thank you to all of you at the faculty, those who I reach out to from time to time for all your assistance, Ms. Renisha Hodge, Ms. Anita Ali Kunkun, and Ms. Alicia Phillips, who this afternoon not only assisted me, but for the build-up for this afternoon was getting several calls from me and emails to make sure that everything just went perfectly. Good afternoon also to all the members of the Law Association of Trinidad and Tobago, to all the young attorneys and the budding attorneys on the platform. A special big up to the year one students who I hope are recovering from their grades. Many of you did very well, so congratulations. And for those of you who didn't do as well as you had hoped, there is always year two to make up for it. And a special good afternoon to all of you who are on the platform. I want to thank Mr. Prasad very much for his introduction. And I want us to really focus on what this afternoon session is about. You might find I make great reference to my career, but that is not to promote me. It is really to encourage all of you, those of you who are in the profession, those of you who will soon be in the profession, and those of you who have started studying to become attorneys at law, to let you know, as Rajiv said, our profession is a very important one, and it will always be relevant. And many of you who have interacted with me on a professional and personal level will know that in addition to my avid love for Star Wars, for which I make no apology, because you'll see I'm actually in the Millennium Falcon right now, and I'm wearing my Star Wars tie, and I make no apology for it, because as I say, Star Wars is about a fight for justice. Our profession is one in which we will always be relevant. And we have to, at the earliest stage, find our space. In other words, in this wide open galaxy of the law, where is our best fit so that we can make our greatest contribution? In preparation for this afternoon, I asked several persons, especially, of course, the Dean of the Faculty, because this, I understand, is his initiative, and I thank him again for the initiative, and for those in the Law Association for seeing it a fit initiative. I asked him, I said, what should be the pitch? And Professor Heffron was very comprehensive in terms of explaining to me what was the objective. The only thing he didn't say is, Gillian, if you don't hit it this afternoon, and if you don't hit it out of the ballpark, you will be sanctioned. And I presume my sanction is that I will lose my contract with the Faculty of Law and may no longer be a lecturer. So I just say to the Dean, if that's what it's going to be, well, you let me know at the end of the session, because I always look forward to feedback. And I asked, what is the pitch? And that was a constant question I kept asking. What should be the pitch? To a very good friend of mine who I always go to when I say, what do you think should be the pitch? And she indicated to me, well, Gillian, that pitch ought to be not only why law is important, but in sharing your journey and explaining what the obstacles were and how you overcame them, ensure that you inspire and ensure that at the end of the day, you are able to show not only the relevance of the profession, but that there is room for everyone. And I kept asking, I asked my JRC, Shakari Gordon, I asked her, I said, Shakari, what should be my pitch? And that's what I was asking everybody. Shakari, what should be my pitch? Brenda, my executive assistant, what should be the pitch for this afternoon? Suzanne, what should be the pitch? And then I realized that therein the question lay the answer, because the pitch that I'm going to be using this afternoon, I ask you to remember that word pitch, because in this profession, you have to be able to pitch to where you want, visualize it, and then achieve it. And the reason I say remember the word pitch, it's because that's the acronym that I'm actually going to use this afternoon, PITCH. And it's very interesting that our moderator spoke to the relevance of our career and the importance of the career of the lawyer. Because some of you who have studied Shakespeare, I studied Shakespeare up to Form 5, and the particular play which I love and think is Shakespeare's best was, of course, Macbeth. And I never studied Shakespeare beyond Form 5. But for those who have studied Shakespeare, you may remember that in his play Henry VI, that occurs in Part 2, Act 4, Scene 2, that's the way you give the citation, Dick the Butcher says this, quote, "The first thing we do, let's kill all the lawyers," end of quote. And many people over the decades since Shakespeare wrote those lines have used those lines in a very derogatory way to our profession. Our profession is perhaps the profession that gets the most kicks and butts and is the subject of most jokes. And when I say jokes, I mean ill jokes, jokes that are adverse to the profession. And many people say, Shakespeare said, let's kill all the lawyers, let's get rid of them. But if you really put the statement in its context, many persons, and I'm in the group of the many persons, argue in favor of this school of thought that Shakespeare was not actually making an adverse comment about our profession when he wrote, "The first thing let's do, let's kill all the lawyers." But it is because in that context, to create chaos, there was a recognition that if you want to create chaos, and if you want to ensure that a tyrant is able to succeed, then you get rid of all the lawyers, because the lawyers are the ones who protect the rights. The lawyers are the ones who promote the rights. The lawyers are the ones who promote democracy. The lawyers are the ones who look and protect the rights of the disenfranchised. And therefore, whenever anyone tells you, Shakespeare said, let's kill all the lawyers, all the lawyers are the same thing, you tell them, say, listen, you should really go and read carefully the play and the context in which it was said by Dick the Butcher, and don't be guilty of murdering the thoughts of Shakespeare, because what he was promoting was actually the importance of our profession. Because if you get rid of our profession, then you open the doors to anarchy, tyranny, and total chaos. I want you to remember that. So where did it all start for me? Now, this is not once upon a time on the 17th of April, 1967, a child was born in San Fernando, da, 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 la-di-da-da, blah, 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 blah. No, it's about me from a very young age, recognizing for me, and I remember 3.5 to 4 years old, always wanting to be a fighter for justice. I always wanted to ensure that good overcame evil. And yes, I am going to put it out there and say it straight. I always said, people quote me, and I am quoted because I was quoted in Hansard, made the recordings when I was wearing that hat of a politician. I always said politics was my passion. and my love was the law. And the reason I said that is politics was my passion and law was my love, is that I felt with the love of my law, I would be able to enter the world of politics because I felt that politics was where you could create real positive change, not on a micro level, but on a macro level. And many people now say, well, you know, Gillian, you can't as a judge refer now to your life in politics. And I said, no, that is a part of my life. What I will say, and I've always said, is I am impartial and I will never let what happened or occurred in my political life ever interface or interfere in my role as a judge in terms of the administration of justice. So I'm just saying to you that yes, and what I've realized now is perhaps politics wasn't my passion. And I realized law was always my passion. It is just that I felt the best manifestation of law or the best use of law in terms of creating positive change was in politics. And I've come to understand when I look back and when I share with you this afternoon that you don't have to enter into the world of politics to create that positive change. For those of you who would like to go there, and there are many attorneys who are in the political arena, locally, regionally, and abroad, we have many world leaders and regional leaders. We just look to Barbados where we see the everybody loves Mia, you know, and in terms of the Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honourable Mia Mottley, a lawyer herself. And we all have to see what are the skills that we have and how we can use those skills in the various areas that exist in that space in which we want to operate in our careers as lawyers. So let me start by telling you that back in the day, I entered the Faculty of Law in 1986. I graduated in 1991. Work out in math, I turned 55 years old this year. Always wanted to be a state prosecutor. So I wanted to do law. Interestingly enough, back in the day, and you know, I always say, I know our audience may be wider than Trinidad and Tobago, but I say it for Trinidad and Tobago in this regard. Trinbagonians, many of them do not do proper research, but they like to give an opinion. And back in the 80s when I was studying and I told people, because I went through the stage, I always loved law, you know, but I wanted to be a pilot, I wanted to be an aeronautical engineer. I was always literally aiming for the sky because I want to be a pilot so I could fly. I want to be an astronaut and actually registered to go to the Embry-Riddle School in Daytona because I wanted to be an astronaut. And as I told them, a legal astronaut so that I would be able to advise NASA. And people said, you know, Gillian, if you're going to do law, you have to do modern studies. And when I researched it, so everybody said you have to do history and geography in A-levels. Well, I liked history and geography up to Form 5, was never good at the languages. And I will tell you that in Form 3, when I chose subjects, I did not choose any of the languages. I did 9 subjects, not one was a language. I focused on mathematics and ad maths. And I'm saying that was not a good thing because more and more now, to be relevant, those who can speak more than one language, that is a very good thing. So yay to Rosetta Stone and all the other platforms and software we could use to learn the languages. But being multilingual now is a huge thing, especially with globalization and the opening of so many doors that have taken place and platforms that have taken place where literally even this afternoon, on a rainy afternoon, people are in their homes, people are perhaps abroad. We have people not just in Trinidad, but in Tobago. And the whole idea is that with everything opening up, more and more of the skills that are considered non-legal skills are the skills that are required to make us stand out. You see, back in the day in the 80s and the 90s, it was always said that our profession was a profession that was overcrowded. So I'm telling you, in the 80s, we were hearing it. In the 90s, we were hearing it. Early 2000s and moving on, we always heard that our profession is overcrowded. Why are you doing law? That's overcrowded, oh gosh. And I remember former Chief Justice de la Bastide once saying many decades ago that the profession is perhaps overcrowded, but there's always room at the top. And some people interpreted room at the top to mean that it would be a profession in which if you had network, you could do your networking, if you had contacts, if you could pull a string or cable, if you were wealthy, you would be able to make it to the top. And that's not what it's about. More and more, what we are seeing in the world is that it isn't about who is well connected or who is wealthy. No doubt those things work for some people and have worked, but it is those who can distinguish themselves using those special skills in their profession that make them distinct. And I want to drive that home, because I will tell you that when I graduated in 1991, I remember everybody back then, we didn't have WhatsApp, but everybody calling everybody. Now, when I say call, we didn't have iPhones or Samsung or any of the other devices. When we had calls back in the days, you're dialing with the rotary and you're using the phone and, hey, what are you doing? Hey, where did you get a job? Hey, who are you working for? And I remember being very hurt and depressed. I was called to the bar on the 20, not because I was called to the bar, I was called to the bar on the 25th of October, 1991. So I was 30 years old last year. And I remember being depressed when in a telephone conversation, someone who had graduated in my year was giving me the breakdown on everybody. You know, X is working here and Y got a job there. And you didn't know Z is related to so-and-so and F is so-and-so godfather, so they're working. Gillian, where are you working? I'm sure you have some big job because your father is a judge. And I said no to this person, said, no, I am still looking. Don't give me that, Gillian. You don't have your job lined up. Look, all of us have jobs. I said, no, I don't have any job lined up. I know I want to go and work in the office of the DPP, but I don't have any job lined up. And, you know, I want to go and be a prosecutor. That's what I want to do. I want to go and work in the office of the DPP. And she ended the call by saying to me, well, anyway, I'm not worried about you because I know your father will be able to get you a job and you will, everything will work out for you. And it hurt because that presumption was a very wrong presumption. Back in the day when you wanted to go and work in any of the state agencies, whether it was Solicitor General, CPC, Chief State, the DPP's office, where I wanted to go, the DPP's office, there was a long wait in terms of the administrative procedure that had to be followed. So that although I was called in 1991, I was told that the job may not come through if I was successful in terms of the process, which included interviews and so, until maybe a year or two. It was a long wait. And even the scholarship winners who had to be placed, and many of you on the platform are scholarship winners, you will know that the placement takes a while. So that is not something of recent vintage. And what was I to do in the interim? And that's when I had to drill down. You see, what I had done before graduating is that I was lecturing. And I decided back in the day that one of the best ways to develop your skill to be an advocate, one of the best ways to keep current with the law, and one of the best ways to ensure that you are communicating well is by lecturing. Because you want to share knowledge, but you also may have the knowledge, but you have to be able to communicate. And I was lecturing at that point, and that's where many of the other young attorneys and persons who were studying to be attorneys, we were lecturing. And using that skill of being able to communicate, and it was a skill that was developed. I was then able, in 1991, remember, I'm now looking for a job in October. I don't have a job. I want to contribute to the home where I was living, because you want to also, you know, you don't just want to be around doing nothing. Many young people I meet today, oh God, I don't have a job. And I say, okay, you don't have a job, but you have skills. What are these skills that you are using while you wait? And I remember back in 1991, while waiting for a job, I continued teaching. I was at the University of the West Indies, and I thank Miss Marcel Ferdinand, who was at the time teaching elements of commercial law at the University of the West Indies. And when she said to me that she would not be able to continue, she said, I recommended you, Gillian, go into the university and make your contribution there. And I taught elements of commercial law back in the day in 1991, while waiting on my dream job to go and work in the office of the DPP. And while in the university lecturing, Christine Topin-Allaha, an attorney from Barbados, a year ahead of me, called me in December and she said, Lucky, I heard you're not doing anything. Come, I'm in private practice. Come, do something. Come, you know, we'll have some little odds and ends. And I went there. I was also selling stationery. I will not call the name of the attorney at law who had a stationery business. And I was out selling stationery also. And when people said, I thought you're a lawyer, how come you're selling stationery? I said, because I'm developing my marketing skills. I'm going to be able to sell this stationery, and I would open the briefcase. And I said, I'm going to sell you these products, not by telling you anything bad about the others, but showing you why these products are the best. Well, how is that any different to becoming an advocate in the DPP, where as a prosecutor, in that closing address to the jury, yes, you show them the holes in the defense case, but that is not enough to get a conviction. You have to show them the strength of the prosecution's case because you're proving beyond reasonable doubt. And even when I was principal of the Academy of Tertiary Studies, which is another hat I wore, I never sold the school based on, well, that school bad and this school not doing well. Other schools might have done that and said adverse comments about our school ATS, but I always sold it, and we always sold it on the strength of our school. What was the strength? What made our school stand out? And that's what you have to ask yourself. As an attorney at law, develop your skills that will make you stand out. So anyway, to just get to the story. So 1991 into 1992, I'm lecturing at the University of the West Indies, and bam, an opportunity arises. The University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus, wants to do distance learning. So I want to show you that even before we had all these virtual platforms that you young millennials, and I think the Gen Z generation, you want to talk about, all this technology. And so, which is great. I think technology is excellent. You want to talk about all this technology that you have and we're doing. Even this afternoon, we're on the virtual platform. We started that in our university, St. Augustine campus, back in the day. And when it was asked, well, listen, elements of commercial law, we want that to be one of the areas. I remember going to what is now where the bookstore is, and incidentally, where Factive Law has its offices now. And it was there, upstairs there, we began, and in the Faculty of Agriculture, there was in fact a room we would go in, and we would go there, and on a Friday evening, we would be teaching distance learning. Of course, we were using what you would call archaic devices, where it was like a microphone, like what you see in these old-time shows that they use, hello, hello, Jamaica, come in, Jamaica, like walkie-talkies. And it worked. Because the University of the West Indies, St. Augustine campus, like all the other campuses in the region, recognized that we had to reach. We had to have that reach for our region. We couldn't deprive others. And it was using that. Remember, you don't have PowerPoints to present and so, because you're not seeing anybody. And that's no different because this year in Faculty of Law, my students told me, Judge, I'm not turning on my camera, You know how you young people talk, right? I'm not doing this, as you are aware. So we didn't have cameras, we couldn't see anybody, but you were going just with your voice. And you had to find a way of teaching and lecturing, of hearing students, listening actively and attentively. So when they had questions, you would be able to answer it. So I just say big up the university, because back then there was the recognition, even without this technology, that we needed to go regional, we needed to go global. And I got that opportunity to develop the distance learning for elements of commercial law, something I feel very, very humbled to have contributed and privileged to have contributed to its development. And then I got the call in 1992, still no job with the office of the DPP. And I realized, what, I have to make my contribution. I'm a lawyer, qualified. And I say, what, let me see what other skills I have. I always loved Bollywood and Hollywood. And in the 1990s, early 1990s, Bollywood was having its own change in terms of it was a new age. So out with the older actors, no disrespect to Rajesh Khanna and Amitabh Bachchan, but there was a new age of young actors and actresses coming forward. Shah Rukh Khan, Salman Khan, Manisha Koirala, Madhuri Dixit, Karishma Kapoor, that whole group coming out now and changing how movies were done. Many of you may remember the movies, if you follow Indian movie theater, Hum Aapke Hai Kaun, Dilwale Dulhaniya Le Jayenge, and of course the first English movie, which is When Love Calls. And I said, what? I love cinema, I'm going to get involved. And I began now getting involved in Indian cinema. And then I got involved in television and got involved with a TV program, a weekly TV program that was showing how Indian culture and Bollywood was actually meeting Hollywood. But not to be outdone, I wanted to also be involved in my Trinbagonian culture. So I called up one of my favorite Calypsonians, and I'll say this afternoon, I hold him in the highest regard, I'll say that, and that is the Black Stallion. And I said to him, I love Calypso, and I sang Calypso when I was in the Faculty of Law. And I want to learn at your feet, because I want to be a part of the culture of Trinidad and Tobago. And he gave me some really good advice. which started with when you start singing a calypso, don't jump up and down and lose all your energy, because by the time you come to the chorus and the second verse, you're dropping down. And so said, so done. Why do I bring all these other things in? Is it relevant to what we're speaking about? Law, career for the ages? Of course. Because I'll tell you that about 5 years ago, when some foreigners were here, and I say foreigners meaning persons from the United States, were lecturing on how to do closing addresses and how to make things interesting and do it different. One of the things they said is, you know, calypso is something that is indigenous to Trinidad and Tobago, and that could be used in a closing address. And I remember sitting as a judge in Tobago, an attorney actually began a closing address singing a calypso. And everybody looked to me as the judge to say, well, are you going to stop it? The jurors were looking, and I just said, you know, at this point, I said, I'm sorry to interrupt. You can start again from the top if you want. Members of the jury, please listen very carefully. We have many ways of communicating, and this is one of them. Singing a calypso and singing calypsos and being on the stage helped to hone in that skill. I always wanted to perform on the big stage in the Marsh Gras, in the Savannah. Never got that opportunity, but guess what? Got another opportunity though. I performed before 22,000 people in the Jean Pierre Stadium in 2007. And I always said that would be my big stage. And singing, communicating, reaching to people, that is what persons do. And if you say, well, that's the advocate, it's not my role. Even if you are going to be working from home, you still have to convince people, whether you're using the platform, whether you're going into a training room, you still have to do that level of convincing and engaging. Anyway, so the good news is, when in 1992, I still have no job with the DPP. So I'm showing you still how it's going. I still have no job with the DPP. And I said, bam, I want to be a DJ. DJ Jill, one in a mill. Put in, pep in your step, and groove in your move. And I go to the radio station, I say, I want to buy my time meaning my 3 hours, and I'm going to play music. And I decided in Trinidad and Tobago, let's have crossover, because we are a very diverse country. We are a rainbow country. We always talk about that, Trinidad and Tobago. And it is that diversity, another skill, the ability to work in a diverse environment. And I wanted to be a part of it, a live part of it. And being involved in the radio station with DJ Jill, one in a mill, getting some good money in. Yeah, while I waited for the job in the office of the DPP, I was able to, Saturday mornings, 9 a.m. to 12 noon, I used to play chutney music, but doing the crossover, I was able then, again, to engage, to understand, got very involved and enjoyed intellectual property, understanding that people were taking the CDs of others and burning them. I have no burnt CDs. I don't believe in that. These are depriving other people of their opportunity to make their money from a skill that they have. And people said again, but what are you doing all of that for? You're a lawyer. I said, yes, I'm a lawyer, but I'm also somebody who has to use other skills. And then good news, fast forward, the 4th of January, 1993, I become a member of the office of the DPP. And I continue with my lecturing, and I continue with my DJing, and I continue sharpening the skills. And I remember going to persons, important to have mentors. And one of my mentors is actually not from the criminal arena. She's actually from the civil arena. And one of my mentors always said to me that in the practice of law, always remember that yes, there are many lawyers, but you have to distinguish yourself, and distinguish yourself as being somebody who has the integrity, the competency, the communication skill, and the ability to represent your client fairly, but also to ensure that you are getting justice. And justice is something that applies to, in other words, you are assisting the court, you're assisting your client, and you're making sure that you're not misleading to be able to get the end game of a win. Yes, you want to win, but you want to win playing fair and square, knowing that you haven't used any level of treachery, I call it, or misleading or delinquency to be able to get ahead. So I work in the office of the DPP, still doing my DJing on the side. And while I'm doing my DJing on the side, everything is going well. And of course, you're hearing attorneys, not Mr. Prasad, but you're hearing attorneys on the defense talking about all the money that they're making, and they're driving the Benz and they're driving the high-end luxury cars. And I'm driving well, I used to take the bus at first. Yep, many people don't believe I used to travel on the bus, leave San Fernando for the 5:15 bus and come up the road and then take the last bus left in those days at 7 o'clock and go down the road. And when I could afford my first car working in the DPP's office was a 1.3 Toyota. And when you're overtaking, you had to wind down the glass. And I was always kicksy because I lived in South. And when you want to overtake, if I had a passenger next to me, I'd say, okay, AC off, wind down glass, you overtake. And then, of course, you put back on the AC, take the glass up. So for those of you who think, okay, you know, when you're to be at the top, you have to live this wealthy and elite, it's not like that at all. It's about really establishing yourself. What will make you different? Not in a bad way, in a good way. And the DJing on the side, I remember people laughing and saying to me, why are you DJing? And I said, because as a state council, and I think it still operates today, you work very hard, but there's no big salary. It's you giving service, and I think it's the best thing to do. I wish national service was something that was mandatory, because I think we all need to give that national service. And I remember to somebody who's asking, the Calypso Singing Attorney won. Actually, in that big event, I came in 7th. I competed against people like the Mighty Chalk Dust, Procro, Sugar Aloes, and so, and I tied for 7th place with All Rounder. And I was very happy with that. There were 25 contestants. So I thought I did very well because I really competed. I was against people like Heather McIntosh, great person. Heather gave me some good advice about when you go on stage, what to do. So hats off to Heather. The fact that you never know everything. Even though you're a lawyer, you think you do, you don't know everything. And when I was in the DPP's office, I was actually making more money as DJ Jill, one in a mill, putting pep in your step and groove in your move. Until one day, a foreman of a jury sent a message on a piece of paper to the marshal in the court to give it to me. And I was sitting in the courtroom. I always, if court started at 9, I used to be in the courtroom 8 o'clock. They used to open the courtroom so I could go in. I wanted to always, you know, have everything organized. And the accused was there, and he saw this paper pass. I didn't see it. And it was the foreman asking if after the case, the council could get this request to play on my show. You know, it was called Garam Geet. So it was a request to play this song, and Kuchna Kaho, to my darling wife, not forgetting auntie, so and so and whatever. There was an inquiry by the judge, Justice Dalsing, and he was writing, you know, you have to do an inquiry because, of course, this juror is now seeking to communicate with the prosecutor. And I remember Justice Dalsing, when he was writing about the inquiry, he had to make notes. He said, and what do you do? I said, I am a DJ. And he looked at me and said, a DJ? I said, yes, Judge, a DJ. And what is the name of your program? Garam Geet. Spell, please. And at the end of the day, the juror, of course, hadn't influenced anybody else. So, but the juror had to recuse. And in those days, we didn't have alternate jurors. So we had to, you know, do the matter all over again, choose jurors all over again. And when I went home, I called the owner of the station and I said to him, the manager, I said, I'll no longer be doing Garam Geet. This will be my last month. And he said, why, Gillian? You just talked in the survey. You beat Chutney Train and everybody wants to be on your program. I said, I know, but my job, it's going to be interfering with my job and I really need to stay in this office of the DPP. So long story cut short, it hurt me. I had to adjust my budget to suit because at the end of the day, I had just lost a very lucrative side profession of being a DJ. And in the midst of all of that, when I leave the office of the DPP, I'm still lecturing at the university and through social sciences. And just to speed it up a little bit, in the office of the DPP, again, Minister of Justice, and that means something. And I appeared against Mr. Prasad in matters, and Mr. Prasad will tell you in a case called Michael Paul and others, Mr. Prasad made a request for disclosure. And the easy way out was to just say that, you know, we know nothing about it, this particular thing that was requested, because I really didn't have it. But digging deep, it was recognized that it existed and then it was destroyed, the item he was asking for. And I always remember, even though it caused the case to go much longer in the end, because of course that became a big issue, the fact is, in my conscience, I knew it was the right thing to do. And again, that just built up the stocks of the integrity. And after leaving the DPP's office, I went for 3 months. I was given a permanent job at the University of the West Indies Social Sciences faculty. I was given my own little office because I decided I would leave the DPP and go into teaching. Because guess where I was heading to? Politics. I was made a senator, and the university said, no problem, once you're a senator, you could still continue teaching. There are those who have been senators and they taught. Then I became a junior minister in the office of the Attorney General. And that was when, the university said, well, Gillian, you have a choice. I mean, we've welcomed you. We put your little nameplate up. You have your office. You have your students. But guess what I chose? Yeah. I chose the politics, because remember back in those days, my view was politics with the passion. And of course, now I'm getting a chance as a lawyer to go and create positive change. And so I left the university. So my history with the university goes way back. So when people say, Gillian, you're at university, I said, no, I was here since 1991, check the records. And I go into politics. And in politics, again, lawyers can make very fundamental and good changes. You're looking at legislation. More than legislation, when I became a member of the lower house, representing a constituency, you get a good idea of what happens in, what are the walks of life. People say you have to know the walks of life, but you really get to understand the walks of life, what people go through. And I also have to mention, I should say in 1992, I forgot this, in law school, I don't know how many of you like this, but I did not like conveyancing. I had the best conveyancing lecturer in Mr. Russell Huggins. He was the best lecturer. He knew his conveyancing. I just didn't like conveyancing. Why? I want to be an advocate for DPP. Where does conveyancing fit into that? And I have to remember, before I went into DPP, that year in 1992, I was offered a job. And I was offered a job at the Nobrega Innocent Company, as it was then called, now Lex Caribbean. And guess what Gillian had to do for that entire year? Conveyancing and conveyancing only. It was conveyancing. I ran the San Fernando office, which was a new office they had established. And again, I had to use my skills there, not only the legal skills in terms of conveyancing, but it was a new office. So you're talking about managing something. And many lawyers have to understand, and that's why I'm going to come out to pitch, haven't forgotten it. Remember that when you're a lawyer, it doesn't make you a good manager. And that is why in many universities now, those who are studying law are being encouraged to do that cross-fertilization in terms of the academics. When I taught elements of commercial law, it's very interesting that I had students from every faculty except the faculty of law, because of course, faculty of law teaches law, and engineering. So once you belong to any other faculty, you could come and do elements of commercial law. Elements of commercial law covered the basics in terms of contract law, tort, you did a little bit of company law, and forget some of the, you did partnerships. And I remember asking an agri student, because we had a strong contingent from agri, and NATSI also they were also part of it. And I said, well, why are you all doing this? And they said to me, well, we are doing it because although we are doing agriculture, we want to learn about law because we'll be entering into contracts, and many of us are going to be doing research, and we want to know what are the property rights and what are the commercial rights. So look how way back in the 90s, we had students already recognizing not to hone in a skill only in a particular faculty, but in order to have this cross-faculty, and many universities are going that way now, where if you're registered in one faculty doing, let's say, law, you can also register in another faculty studying something else. Because in A-levels, just to get back to it, when people said you had to do history and geography, you know what they really meant? That because law is reading, history and geography would be helpful. That was their perception. But that became, to do law, you had to do history and geography, not correct. I did Physics and math. Math is my baby, I love math. Physics and math is what I did. I was accepted in the Faculty of Engineering, Trinidad and Tobago, because although I wanted to do law, I thought maybe I would do engineering and then switch across to the law. Interestingly, our Chief Justice, the Honourable Mr. Ivor Archie, Order of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago, is an engineer first in his training and then did law. And that will explain in great measure, he did mechanical engineering, his ability not only to have the vision for the judiciary to take us into this new age of technology, digitization, globalization, all that is taking place, but a mechanical engineer is trained to fix. I only did engineering. I went to the faculty for 2 weeks and then switched over to law. And the thing is, I love physics and math. And I'm saying to you, whether you have studied the sciences, the arts, whether you have done business, whether you have majored in mathematics, whether you've done the languages, all of those fields of study are going to help you to become that outstanding lawyer. As I said before, we've always been told that the profession is overcrowded. Yes, it may be overcrowded, but you make your space, you find your place. So moving forward now, I go into politics. Then I go and I sit on the backbench. That is when I am no longer controlled by the whip. And I remember there was the passage of this legislation, the Police Complaints Authority legislation, that was passed as a package of legislation in which there was a revamping and reviewing of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Act, the creation of this Police Complaints Authority that was meant to be an independent civil observation and to ensure that police were conforming to the laws, and it was about civilian oversight of police. And I remember in that legislation, when it was passed in 2007, I was still in the lower house at that time in politics. And I remember saying, be careful about this legislation with the Police Complaints Authority. You are giving a lot of power to the director and the deputy director. They're the ones who form the authority, those two, director and deputy director. I said, and if you get a monster as the director of the Police Complaints Authority, be careful that you don't create something that you cannot control. So do not give too many powers to this director of the Police Complaints Authority and the deputy director, because they're the two people, director and deputy director. If you give them too many powers, they'll become a law unto themselves. And of course, I use the Star Wars analogy with the Emperor and everything that went with it and Darth Vader. And I said, and I was happy in the end, that yes, the PCA legislation, and I contributed to this, you have the independence, but it was not a body that was just going to be a runaway horse. You had to ensure that with that independence, the PCA too would be accountable and that it would be independent. And that is why the PCA, in terms of the choice of director and deputy director, it is the only piece of legislation in which the prime minister and the leader of the opposition, if they agree on a person, that person gets to be director or the deputy director. If they disagree on the choice, the president chooses. And that's really good. It's not, in other words, it means that you have the two parties, opposing groups coming together, and they must agree. If they don't agree, then the president chooses in sole discretion. The end of the day, having said all of that about the legislation, lo and behold, guess what happens? In 2010, December 2010, I become the first director of the Police Complaints Authority. And I remember one journalist who had done his job and gone to the Hansard to see what I had said, asked me the question when I was appointed. The question was, Director Lucky, you said that if this legislation, when it was passed, that the person could be a monster because they would have a lot of powers. I said, yes, but you should see how we adjusted it to ensure that that wouldn't happen. And I take the opportunity again, being the director of the Police Complaints Authority, to say, yes, my legal skills were necessary, but with the deputy director, Master Ralph Doyle, and I salute him, I say thanks, because it was a joint effort. We were starting a new organization from scratch, something that hadn't operated for 4 years because it was something new. And it was not just legal skills now. It wasn't just the ability to know the law, because he was a master, pun intended, in terms of civil law. I knew the criminal law. I director, he is the deputy director. And we built the PCA from scratch. You needed to know organizational skills. You needed to be an entrepreneur. You also needed, because when it started, remember, we didn't have all the resources. We didn't have cars. And I remember SORT had just been dismantled. And I went to the head of SORT and I said, not SORTT, I'm talking about, it was then, this is another organization. And when I went, I said, would we be able to get these vehicles? And we got 4 vehicles. So in other words, the marketing skills that I had learned along the line, as I told you, selling the stationery, being the principal of Academy of Tertiary Studies, all these things in which I had to market, I was able now to go and say, look, this is what we need. This is why we need it. And we were able to build a PCA from scratch, from an office that just had wasn't even 4 levels. People thought it was the building on Abercrombie Street. It wasn't. It was just 1 level. Housing about 20 of us. We were able to go and put forward a justification to get level 24. And I want to say hats off to the skills of Master Ralph Doyle, to Miss Jeanette Best, who was our head of the finance department. Yes, you're a lawyer, but you don't know about finance and running. Yes, we do a course in Human Law School, and that's good. It gives us the basics. But as someone said to me, Gillian, you and Master Doyle can run the legal side, but you need to make sure that somebody is running the financial side, somebody competent. We got that in Miss Best. Miss Louise Lioto, who was running the administrative side. And you had to use all these skills because guess what? You're dealing with human resources. So we had Ms. Chrisley Rajpal Singh, who, though much younger than Master Doyle and myself, was able to teach us. We had IT, Mr. Ricky Nanglal. We had in law, Ms. Anita Mangra. All these persons using their skills to build things and to help us to become what I would like to humbly say was an establishment, police complaints authority. Nobody knew about it. But those who came after, and I say it with the greatest respect to you all, you have benefited from the hard work of those who have been in the trenches, those who gave you a gift that you didn't have to do all the begging and pleading and using all the skills that we had to get it to what it is. And after being the director of the PCA, I became a temporary judge, Justice Rajiv Prasad, and I for 1 year. And then after 1 year, I left. And that 1 year, 2009, 2010, that was right after politics. And then I became the PCA director. And after being the PCA director, then I went back into the judiciary in 2014. All this to say that when I was the director of the PCA, I had the program Just Jill. And in Just Jill, people said, why, you're a lawyer in PCA, what you're doing a program for, and you're sitting in a little room all by yourself. But again, hats off and thank you to Mr. Anthony Maraj. And he was able, IETV, he called me up in 2007. He said, now that you lost the election, because I lost the election for the seat of St. Joseph. And he said, now that you're there, what you're going to do? I said, I'm going to be depressed for about 6 months. He said, forget it. Come and do a program, Just Jill. Come and teach people, not law because I wasn't using it to advertise, but about what was happening in society and engage the public, get their views on things. And it was literally Just Jill, just me and a TV screen. And people said, how would that help you in law? But what are we doing this afternoon? Isn't it Just Jill in this chroma keyed background and me talking to you, not seeing you, same thing when I was doing it. And for the many years I did that program, and I say thank you again to Mr. Anthony Maharaj for believing in me. Just understand that while you are, waiting for something to happen, there are other things that you can be doing. I also wrote articles in the newspaper, and that was also a weekly column. And that was also something, again, as I say, engaging the public. So as I come to that, I'm mindful that it's 5:22 and I would like the opportunity to engage you. I just want to say, and I know this is obviously the toughest question, what do you do while you wait for the job? What do you do while you wait for, to get that break that you want? And I keep saying, why are you waiting? Create your opportunity. Isn't that what I did? DJ Jill, 1 in a mill, put in pep in your step and groove in your move. It wasn't too low for me, and I use the word low, to go and sell stationery. I got involved in things. I had skills. In those days, I don't have the voice now, but in those days, I used to be able to sing well. I sang more calypsos. I used to use the other skills I had while waiting for the dream job. And when I got the dream job, all those skills of communication, organization, all worked for me. So now we talk about pitch, P-I-T-C-H, because remember, it was important this afternoon that I needed to know what was my pitch. The P is perform. You need to perform at your optimum at all times. And I know that's hard. You might tell me we'll have some down days. I say yes, but your optimum has a mark. In other words, some days will be better than others, but you have to perform and get that opportunity. When Ms. Ferdinand gave me the opportunity to lecture in her place, Elements of Commercial Law in the University of the West Indies, I didn't fiddle and diddle. What I did was I hit the ground running, and I ensured that with that opportunity, I built on it. When you are appearing, perhaps as a junior attorney, or you've been asked to hold in a matter, and the court says, proceed, use the opportunity to proceed. Because when you perform, people will know. And we are seeing many young attorneys in the Court of Appeal. They are young. And I ask some of them when I'm sitting alone in the chamber court as a single judge, I say, how many years are you at the bar? And I see they look at me as though I want to insult them. And I say, please, I'm not going to insult you. I was very impressed with the way that you made your submissions. And I want to commend you and encourage you. So you make sure that you perform. The I, innovate. Everybody is looking for innovation now. And innovate means that you are doing things that perhaps nobody has done before. I remember when I was in the parliament, I was challenged by an opposition member in a good way. The opposition member, he said, "You're talking about calypso. Sing your calypso first now," thinking I wouldn't do it. And right there and then I looked at the speaker, who looked at me as though I could do it, because he didn't stop me. And if the speaker stands, you know they're going to stop you. And I sang my calypso, verse and chorus, in the parliament. It's in the Hansard. And in fact, a friend of mine, was able to get it for me, Pavin Sukai, when I told him it was done, because many of my friends had sent me a clip of an MP in England singing to the tune of Sound of Silence in Westminster in Parliament. And they said, "Gillian, this is something I could see that you would do." And I said, "I'm sorry to tell you, but I did that already. And they said, "Yes." And I gave them the little excerpt from Hansard where you see me being challenged. And I answer. In those days, you didn't have it taped. You just have it on record, and you see me, you say, MP sings. And I sang in the Parliament, the verse and chorus. And in terms of innovate, you have to find ways of reinventing yourself and doing things that will really make you stand out. I want you to remember that with innovate, people are looking not for the same old. They're looking for how can you bring something new to the table. And I'm just saying, if anybody's going into Parliament and you choose one day to sing, don't use the Sound of Silence. That was done already. Use Chiquitita from ABBA, because it fits in nicely. If you have to say, "Chiquitita, tell me what's wrong," that's from ABBA. You could start with, "Madam Speaker, this is what's wrong. We enraged by your own sorrow." And you could go from there. I'm just saying, if you use it. Innovate. We are all studying to do law. We are all lawyers. I have said in Trinidad and Tobago, it is time, I've said it in the Parliament, it is time that we expand all these holidays we have. Where do we have a Trinidad and Tobago Day? A day when we recognize everybody, because we are a diverse and rainbow country. Africans, Indians, Chinese, Lebanese, Syrian. We have a Venezuelan community. We have a lot of people from all over. And we have the Amerindians. Let us not forget them. By the way, I have Amerindian blood. So if you find I'm looking hot at 55, or at least looking good or not looking like 55 and younger, the Amerindian blood. When we celebrate, it's not a one-off. I've always been saying we need a Trinidad and Tobago Day. And when people talk about, people wearing ties in Parliament, who do you think was the first to wear a tie in Parliament? It was me. I wore the Trinidad and Tobago tie. I have that documented. And I bought 12 ties on Frederick Street and gave it out to 12 people in the Parliament. That's what I mean by innovate. Think out of the box. Be the trendsetter. In that Johnny Depp and Amber Heard trial, people talking about Johnny Depp and whether Disney will rehire him. I have a friend who loves Johnny Depp, and she wants to know if he'll come back as Jack Sparrow. Everybody's talking about his lawyer, Miss Vasquez. And I'm sure she's inundated now with all the briefs that she'll be getting. See, you got to change with the times. Remember, we're doing picture. P for perform, I for innovate, T for set trends. Be a trailblazer. That's what I was doing. I was trailblazing, trend setting, not in a bad way, in a good way. Of course, some people still don't remember that I was the first to wear the tie, and many people don't remember. I've been asking for Trinidad and Tobago Day for the longest while, so we could all celebrate all the cultures that we have on one day, so that everybody is included. And you need to change with the times, and we had to do that in the judiciary. We were already beginning our digitization, and we just had to literally now catalyze it with the COVID-19. And H, help. In that pitch, P, perform, I, innovate, T, be a trendsetter and trailblazer. C, you have to be able to change with the times. H, please remember, you have to help as an attorney at law. You have to help society. You will start in the profession in law as the helpee, that is the person who needs help. And as you progress and as you hone in on your skills and you become more senior, you move from helpee to helper, meaning that you will then in the profession be the one people come to get advice. But I'm talking about helping in wider civic society. I know we now at almost 5:30, and I know we have to have question time. I just say to you that when we talk about a career for the ages, we need to do our SWOT analysis. What SWOT, S-W-O-T, S. What is our strength? And Rajiv said it right, our moderator. We will always be relevant. Without the legal profession, there will be chaos. We need to know what our weaknesses are. And I'll tell you a particular weakness that we face is the AI, artificial intelligence. We are going to have robots doing things. In a couple of years, who knows? And I say a couple, I don't mean two, but I think in about 5 to 10 years, we may have to the court judges, My name is John Brown, and appearing with me is Siri, or appearing with me is Alexa. And because we are moving, Pepper the robot has already gone, the humanoid robot has already gone to Parliament. And it's very interesting what Pepper said when she was in the Parliament. This is an actual humanoid robot that went to Parliament in Westminster. And she was asked the question, what role for humans? And besides Pepper referring to us as workers, a word that concerned me, that the robots will be seeing us as the workers, she talked about the soft skills that will always be needed. And what are the soft skills? Communication, organization, compassion, teamwork. Robots tend to want to work alone. And then I want us to always remember the opportunities that are there. SWO, what is the opportunity? If I had to study, specialize in law, space law, everybody's going into space. What if when I'm in space, I discover something? In the same way, and I don't use the word discover, I come upon something. In the same way that you had persons in the 1400s and 1500s discovering things. I mean, who, they say discovered, I say come upon, because we weren't discovered in the Caribbean. They came upon us. We were already here. I mean, space law is something, who is going to take ownership of things that people find? Law of the sea, what about all the treasures buried below? AI, what about when we have all this artificial intelligence? Are we going to have a code of ethics for robots? And something that I really am passionate about, and if I were younger, although they say that, 860s when people are, recrafting and, recalibrating their careers, this whole thing with artifacts that was stolen, something that's very close to my heart, because we in the Caribbean and other nations and continents that suffered, no countries called, but they were colonized and they had, all their artifacts stolen. You have Nigeria right now crying out and saying, please return all the items that you've stolen from us. There's a big debate as to what should be done. Should it be returned? Should it not be returned? Of course it should be returned. And that is going to be, that would be, because I love archaeology, Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, and Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Star Wars. In other words, the cross-fertilization, in other words, you learn archaeology, you study law, and then now you are able to go study the languages, and then you're able to go and really, help with all these things. And I want to just end by saying that in this whole idea of pitching, in this whole idea of recognizing that we are always going to be relevant, because there's the SWO, the opportunities. And when I see a T, I should say the T, the threat. The threat is that if we don't take our skills to the next level, we are going to be replaced, because in my days, it was a big thing to do research. You now have, AI that can do that. You now have technology. Technology has made things easier. People tend to focus on all the jobs that technology has gotten rid of, but technology has also created jobs. And we have to make sure that we are riding the wave. You don't go into the sea and say, I don't want you to have waves today. You're going to the sea and you say, okay, you're bringing that wave, there's my surfboard, and I'm going to surf with you. So don't change the current. Learn to ride with the current and learn not to let the current make you drown. So as I end, this is what I see. Justice is always the paramount concern for those who promote and protect it, and more so for those who are deprived of it. And that is, I love intellectual property. I was also the chair of the anti-piracy, video piracy, that is, committee. And I always told people, instead of using other people's phrases, which is good, we quoted Shakespeare earlier, quote your own, and this is mine. Justice is always the paramount concern for those who promote and protect it, and more so for those who are deprived of it. We want justice. Our profession will always be relevant. So I encourage you to pitch, perform, innovate, trend, change, help, pitch. And when you pitch, I know this is a movie I'm about to say, but when you pitch, pitch perfect. I thank you, and may God bless you. And I'm ready to answer any questions that anybody may have. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much, Justice Lucky. I can't help but smile. Such an inspiring presentation. And I think that is why in my generation of lawyers, you are our rock star. I want to say Bollywood star, but as I say, the message that you have, given us today is not something that is created. It is life. It is what you have achieved over the years. And I want those who are viewing to understand that there are so many professionals in this legal profession who have, as I said, approached this whole profession by taking on board the approach that you have taken. And, it's not far fetched. It's not that it is something that is way out there. We all can achieve it. So I I am really looking forward to getting some questions. I know that there must be questions. So can we see, is there any questions on the chat? No, but I think there is a hand by Miss Alexander. Do you want to ask your question?
Yes, please.
Sure, go ahead.
Yes. Good afternoon, Justice Lucky. Happy to see you again.
Good afternoon,
Yes,
my student.
Yes, from St. Lucia. So I have two questions for Justice Lucky. But first of all, I really appreciate the background story of all the different things you went into, because even I myself, I'm interested in a lot of different things, but I realize even subconsciously, I've been kind of putting myself in a box because I know I'm doing the law. So I don't want to go into too many different things that people tell me, what? Not law, what kind of lawyer is that? But I realize, it's still good to keep your mind open. Two things. I know when I started doing the law, everybody said, lawyers, we have so many lawyers in St. Lucia. And I said to them, well, we have a lot of lawyers, but a lot of lawyers are doing the same thing, right? And it's about finding your niche and so on. So one, what are the areas of law you find less congested in the Caribbean, or like we have more of the need for? Because sometimes we still have to be, like in St. Lucia, we have to be bringing in people from Trinidad when certain matters arise. So what generally you would find are areas that very few people do it in the Caribbean that we have the need for? And also, did you find it difficult in terms of I believe, did you have your private practice after politics? Did you find it difficult in terms of politics limiting you in terms of clientele or bias in terms of, people maybe feeling they don't want to go to you because you're part of affiliated with that type of political affiliation? So these are my two questions for you.
So with the first one, Marie-Claude, what I would tell you is that St. Lucia never visited except when the plane landed to take off again. But in St. Lucia, what I would do if I were you, one, find your mentor. You must have a mentor. And the way, we are now, your mentor doesn't have to be from St. Lucia. But really zone in and find that healthy balance with what you love in terms of the law where you want to practice, but also in what may be the trends. Remember in pitch, I talked about being the trailblazer and the trendsetter. But you see what the trends are in St. Lucia. Your economy is based primarily on tourism. Am I correct? Yes, you have many hotel chains internationally that are coming on and building, and big issues that arise, such as what are the rights, they want to build out into the sea, and private beaches, public beaches, those kinds of things. I would say to you, find out what are the needs, because the best way to ensure that you are relevant is that you are in an area, not necessarily a niche, but in an area that calls for specialty, that calls for that level of specialization. In terms of private practice, I'll answer and tell you this. I am sure that when I was in politics, I remember there's this catchphrase that arose because of a decision that I had made to put, I say justice first, where the evidence went, and I was not going long party lines. And it was politics has a morality of its own. And my position was that may be so, but integrity must reign supreme. And there were many persons who didn't support the party I belonged to, but said, Gillian, we know that you're a person, even though we support the other party, we know that you're fair. I never had a problem when it came to the private practice. It's just that I wanted to be a prosecutor. When I went into politics and I came out, I want to say, thank you to persons such as Mr. Geoffrey Henderson. Now, Justice Geoffrey Henderson, who was on the ICC as a judge and is back in the judiciary with us. And when Mr. Henderson, Justice Henderson, was then the DPP, he called me. And I remember I was still in the opposition at the time. And he said to me, he said, Gillian, we're looking for a special prosecutor. Would you come and, we'd retain you every month. And when I went, I said, I thank you for the opportunity, Joff, as I call him. I said, I thank you. And I promise you one thing, that my fee will be based on how I felt the DPP's office. As a DPP prosecutor, I always felt that when we hired people on the outside, they got so much money and did less work for what we did. And I made sure, I said, Geoffrey, it will be on one condition. My fee would be the fee equivalent to what a senior state would get, even though I would do 3 times the work. I said, give me the workload, because I want to prove that when I got the opportunity to come back now as a private special prosecutor, that I didn't use it to make big fees. And I'm happy to say that. So I'm saying my private practice was something that was and would have done well. I didn't suffer from any bias. In fact, people came to me and said, we're coming to you because we know you will say it like it is. Of course, when you tell people like it is, people tell you, tell me the truth, but most people can't accept it. And I also want to say, even when I was in Parliament, I remember the former AG, Mr. John Jeremy, Senior Counsel, when he was Attorney General, and I was on the backbench, what we would do when we had legislation, we would have that level of collaboration. And that's what I'm talking about when you're an attorney, communicate. And I said to him, AG, if you share with me without breaching privilege, but if you tell me this is what we're thinking is, and these are the cases we looked at, and this is the opinion that we got that suggests why we need to have it. For example, when we were changing the rules of hearsay, and allowing in, for those of you who studied evidence with me and studied evidence from the Trinidad and Tobago perspective, the laws of hearsay changed to allow persons who just give statements to be admitted. And I remember the AG sending the case of Stephen Grant, which went to the Privy Council. And this was unheard of, that an AG who's representing the government would be speaking to opposition backbench, but it was all with a view of getting it right. So I just say that, Marie-Claude, so you'll understand why it is important to build your character. Because once you build your character, people will feel comfortable coming to you.
Great. I see Zion. Do you have a question?
Hello, good afternoon. And hello, Justice Lucky. Thank you for such a passionate speech as always. My question deals with the motivation to keep going. After you complete your first year, like quite a few of us have, I know that the sticker shock of our grades may turn us off from this profession, and we may be second guessing, is this really what I want? How do we first deal with that and overcome it? And what do you suggest we look at for motivation?
Sure. Don't let your grades deter you, because grades meaning if you didn't get what you expected, and you have, that you put in the work, then it could only be misinterpretation of question. That's why I like my science background. What could it mean? You misinterpreted the question, or that you didn't drill down enough, or that you are using a format to answer. You may think it's all about the case law and it's not. So you need to understand exactly what the person is looking for. And we all go through that. I remember in my year 2, and somehow it always happens in year 2. And in my case, we had to study in Barbados. So you're also in a foreign land, and you ask yourself, is this what I want to do? Am I really doing the right thing? If in a career, you never ask yourself that, I don't care how many people who are entertainers. Entertainment law also is a big thing to go into, especially since you have the St. Lucia Jazz Festival. That's the Marie-Claude. I'm just saying, you always have to ask yourself that question, because that's one way of ensuring that you're pitching yourself right. You see, when you're pitching, and you would see it in any sport, in any field, in any profession, you have to make sure you're pitching right. And to pitch right, you have to ask yourself, am I doing the right thing? And my inspiration to it is, for those of you who did crim 2 and you don't like your grade, it just means that you misinterpreted, or you didn't answer what you were supposed to answer. And, you learn. It's important to learn where you went wrong so you could improve.
Nelicia Adams, you have a question?
Yes, you spoke about the importance. You spoke about the importance of getting a mentor.
Yes.
When you're not, I'm not at all from the legal profession. I don't have that background, no family, no friends, etc. So what would you suggest in terms of, getting a mentor for that network?
So I'll tell you a quick little story. I always wanted to meet the soon-to-be principal of the University of the West Indies, and she was then the dean at the time, Professor Rosemary Bellantwine. I'd never met her I'd heard a lot about her and how brilliant she was. I had read her books and so. And I just wanted to meet her because she was a mentor without even knowing it, in terms of her passion, in terms of all that she's done, her wealth of knowledge, sharing the knowledge. I mean, she's an expert on so many things. And I just called up one day the Faculty of Law and I asked to meet her. And I remember when they transferred the call, she said, who are you? I said, Gillian Lucky. And she said, okay, and I'm busy. How can I help you? I said, I want to come and meet you. She said, why? I said, it's because I'd just like to meet you, please. And you've always been somebody I admired. And that's how I met Professor Antoine. She made time for me to meet me. And it so happened a month after, she called to say, listen, we're looking for a tutor in Crim 1. Was a tutor then. Would you be willing to do it? I said, yes. I said, on one condition. She said, what? I said, I don't want to be paid. And if I'm paid, it will be going in the Student Welfare Fund. And for a person who may not be in the profession, or you're in the profession looking for somebody, you got to be brave. And if you have no friend, I am willing to be a friend. I'm willing to put you on to people who may be nearer your age. Like I said, I'm 55. You have to be brave enough. GillianLucky@gmail.com. Tell my students that if you have no friends, I'll be your friend and I'll pass you on to somebody better than me. So if you feel that you don't have, or you're not brave enough, many of the people who I've met, I've just been brave enough to go up to them and say, hi, I'm Gillian. And such and such and such, and would you be willing to do what and what and what? That's the truth. And I'm saying to you, so my answer, Alicia, is that if you have no one, I'll help you find someone. That's what it's about.
Gillian, allow me to put in a 2 cents here, if you don't
Of
mind.
course, moderator.
This profession, and I'm speaking not only from a law association point of view, but there are a large amount of lawyers who are willing to take time to help younger persons. But the problem, of course, is how do you get that interaction? And it's even worse in a time of COVID. But, I always remember when I was a student up in London and thinking about, well, where am I going to work? Because like you, I didn't know anybody, didn't have any links that could help me. And I went into my library and I pulled the West Indian reports and I started looking at the Court of Appeal judgments to see who were the good lawyers in Trinidad and Tobago, because at that time I really was not following. And I got some names and I wrote letters of saying, well, you know what? I'm finishing my Bachelor of Laws degree, didn't have my LEC. I'm coming to Trinidad and I would like to come work in your office and gain some experience. And I did write about 10 letters, but I got 5 positive responses. And just for the record, I was no first class honors kind of student. I was just basically ordinary student. There is a lot of goodwill, but you have to go and tap it. You have to write those letters. You have to make contact. And much to my surprise, meeting with different lawyers got me a job opportunity to go and do a sort of internship. And that made a very big difference in my career. So, don't think that you don't know anyone, right? You have to put yourself out there. So I don't know if that helps a little bit. There is a question from the representative for the faculty.
Hi, everybody seeing me clearly, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Justice Lucky, first and foremost, I would like to say last year, when you taught us, you said if we get lower than a B+, we cannot speak to you. I got an A-. I just want to bring that up first.
Hats off. Hats off, and I don't need any documentary proof. We'll do that when we come to the law of evidence in Hewarding Law School.
Of course. Thank you, Justice. So the question is, in terms of your public speaking and your creativity, because the way you teach and the way you speak and all the things you were telling us, like handing out ties as a senator and wearing the colorful ties and all these different things you do, having a show, being the DJ, it requires a lot of creative energy. Where do you get all these all this creative juice comes from?
So, and I'll tell you this. So first of all, congrats on the A-. I'm sure maybe it was my fault or not yours. Should have been an A maybe. First of all, we are all creative, and I believe that. And I used to tell you all this, and I still say it. Ask me to draw a leaf, and I can't draw it. I am not good in certain areas of creativity. We are all creative. And I am of the firm view that in fulfilling that curiosity, which is something also we must have, it is very important to learn as early as we can what is our area of creativity. I knew mine from very early because I always liked going on stage, and unknown to my parents, I went and sang a calypso in Skinner Park at age 7. They asked for people to come up in those days during the break when they were judging. The costumes, they'd ask somebody, and I just went and they just heard my voice booming through a microphone. So I always knew I always liked the stage. But there are people, creativity is not just about performing on stage. It's about so many other things. Some people are creative in how they organize. I have an executive assistant who is top of the line in Brenda, and Brenda's creativity is in so many ways that I see. So I'm saying to you, find where you are creative. It doesn't have to be in the public speaking, and so it could be in how you organize, how you write. Sometimes I see creativity in the submissions that are put forward, in how persons have been able to take the law and without transgressing legal principles have been able to use it to the legal principle to be able to justify or substantiate a particular point.
Great, thank you. Now, not seeing any more questions, well, in the chat. Does anyone else want to take the opportunity to get this opportunity to get Justice Lucky to answer your questions? Maybe I could throw this out to you. Do you think that merely because someone is doing their Bachelor of Laws degree, that precludes them from trying to apply to the different firms and chambers and within the legal profession to get some experience? Because as you and I both know, the earlier you can get your foot in the door, the better your chances are in terms of getting a mentor, getting someone to learn from. Because it's said to me often that, well, we wait till we go to law school. We wait till it's in service. Do you have a view on that, Justice?
Yes, I do. And I'll tell you, Rajiv, and I did it because I'm always very concerned, I'll tell you, and I am mindful of the time. And it is this, and you would know this also, Rajiv, from your practice, because I want to just say kudos to Mr. Prasad, who has a practice and who has many young attorneys and interns. And I remember Mr. Prasad saying that he wanted to be available for and to be there and to mentor as many people as he could, because you always have those who fall through the cracks and you always have those who feel left behind. And, Mr. Prasad, I commend you for that.
Thank you.
And I know that is also the philosophy of Ms. Choate, Senior Counsel also. When she, as president of the Law Association. And I want to say that I'm of the view, start from as early as possible. And it's how, Rajiv, the world is changing. And I speak to you as somebody who's over 50. We were taught, that you go, you work hard, you retire when you're 60, and that's when you'll pay off the mortgage for the house, because you'd have started to build the house, own the home. It's not like that anymore. The Gen Z generation is thinking differently. They are a faster group. They want things as, it's a faster pace. I've had young person say to me, Judge, what I want is, I want to rent. I don't want to get married right now. I don't have children. I want to travel the world. I want to, do things in a different order. So even the way people are doing things is different. And my point of view is, and I did it. And that's what I'm saying. Many people, unfortunately, when they see Gillian Lucky, they think, oh, I have this privileged life. Whenever I can't tell you, if I tell you I traveled in a bus for 2 years, that's what I did. And I mean, as a judge, I still drive a RAV4, and I know what it is to go and get a car when it's over 5 years, certified, to comply with the law. Because my view has always been be humble, not be arrogant. And in terms of what you're saying, Rajiv, I threw that in just to segue into, you ask somebody, listen, you may not be using your legal skill. Well, I mean, you may not be there in the chambers doing law, but don't tell me in a chamber you couldn't do something else. There's still the need for the research. There's still the need to put documents together. There's still the need when you are presenting to a court to, show Mr. Prasad, you are an advocate, So when you speak into the court, you want to find something very quickly. The Hague Convention, which happened quite recently, you want somebody who could Google it quickly, get it to you, Article 13. So you are now using your skills to be able, and that is to me where you develop communication, HR issues. There's a young attorney, Ayana Norville, scholarship winner, doing very well where she is now. I have learned so much from these younger people who are able now to say, what is the plight of the young attorney? What is the worry of the young attorney? Because you can't help people if you don't know what their problem is.
Agreed. And that's the point, because we really need to make an effort. And I mean, you can't speak for everybody in the legal profession, but there are many out there who are willing to help. I see Miss Lewis has raised a hand. What's your question, please?
Hello, everyone.
Afternoon.
Hello, Doc.
Afternoon.
Justice, Lucky, and everyone else. So good to see you. This was really a very inspiring, I want to call it talk, but it's what we needed to hear. You know, it's this kind of things pump you up and you're like, yeah, I was thinking this and that. Yes, you mentioned about it's really good, you know, to have a mentor. And sometimes you have a mentor in front of you and you don't even know the person is a mentor. You know, you're like, oh, I'm not ready for that. And in regards to like being innovative, you know, there are times you have so many ideas and your things you see that you could put in. And specifically, you know, I live in the United States, but from Dominica and hope one day to go back there. Sometimes you come up with certain things and you're like, hey, you know, we need some of these changes, and you meet a lot of problems and it's just you and you alone. And then most times when people are innovative, sometimes they get very selfish because they don't try to bring others on board. You know, they want to be the person to be the first to have done that. What do you suggest when you meet this kind of roadblocks?
When you meet a roadblock, I always say, there is always a way to overcome a roadblock. And that is why, Lisa, the importance of having the mentor, somebody to reach. All the lecturers you've had, me included, I know you all can't reach out to me right now because I'm marking the evidence scripts and I say no more, right? But what I'm saying is, I still have students, those who still think they need me, reach out to me when they've graduated, and I see how I can help. And that's from the region, you know. So Lisa, what I'm saying is when you graduate, you are still going to have those things. And the idea is on any journey, this has been a journey. On any journey, you're going to get roadblocks. If you have a journey in which is only highway, you know how boring it is. Go and speak to a trucker, those truckers who have to drive, you know, and they have straight highway, no humps, no bumps. They will tell you how boring it is. Again, it is all about being able to get to somebody who is willing to help. And there are people, because it starts with, as Mr. Prasad was saying, you know, you have people in the profession, you have people you have met as your tutors, as your course directors. Even if they can't help directly, they will reach out and they will help you. Rajiv, can you read the comment from Larry Rowland for me in the chat? I'm not getting the entire comment.
Yes.
Concern.
He was basically saying that he did the LPC course, had not gotten a 6-month attachment for the LPC course, finding it extremely difficult to get help, getting adjusted to being a new attorney. So, you know, he's feeling he's like at square one and very limited experience drafting, research, and advocacy skill. So he also had the experience with a few attorneys, but he just never really have the time to help. And it's refreshing to hear the opposite. I've asked him, I've sent him my email and asked him to reach out to me. But the truth is, you are going to find instances where that, you know, depending on who you go to, lawyers are generally very busy. You just have to be persistent. I mean, with the right balance of being polite and respectful. But the point about it is, there are people out there to help. You just have to know how to get in contact with them.
And if I could just add, Rajiv, to Larry, I know you sent him your email, but I'd also like, Larry, you can send it to Gillian Lucky, spelled as my name, at gmail.com. The reason is I am quite familiar with the LPC, having worn the hat of the principal of Academy of Tertiary Studies, many of the students who then went on to do the LPC, and many of the concerns, because Rajiv, I'm sure in your chambers, or you said you would have interacted with young attorneys who have done the LPC, and they need to have that, because it isn't just about the 6 months, it's also about the fact that you're doing a whole, if I might say, it's a whole cultural shift, and it's a whole understanding of the law, and it's a whole different approach. Our laws, you see, we are not just UK law driven now. As you would know, Rajiv, Canada and other jurisdictions playing critical roles. So if you would like, GillianLucky@gmail.com. I wish in my days I had a court of appeal judge who would have given me the email. They never even gave you the numbers. They never even spoke to you, some of them, some, not all. Rajiv, if you went up to some of them, no names called, back in the day, you know what would happen, right? Not all.
I'm not sure that I would have gone close to that. But you know, times are changing, and we are grateful for that.
And always be respectful. You know, you're not going there like a groupie or something, or to say, well, you know, here I am, because you don't do that. But you go look. As I said, how I interacted with Professor Antoine. You know.
Yes, but I have a very interesting question here from Kimberly. Thank you so much for the presentation, Justice Lucky. No, sorry, not Kimberly, sorry. This is one from Navash Maxwell. What do you
Right.
think is the best avenue for young persons to become politically active?
Okay, I have 1 minute to answer this, and I'm going to give you my story. If not, you can get the whole story on the TED talk that I did, right? Courageously Lucky. But it was this. To be a senator, our act, some people don't even know the legislation, but the act says you have to be over 25. It's different to be a member in the lower house, okay? The lower house, no time, no age limit. And when I had just turned 25, in fact, my birthday was April the 17th, and I was asked to become a senator. And I was in DPP's office. And I rang everybody up and I told them, all my friends, I'm going to be a senator. I'm going to be a senator. I'm going into politics. Politics is my passion. I'm going. And when I went to get my parents' blessings, my mother told me, she said, I will not be encouraging this. She said, you need first to build your reputation. You first need to go out there. You don't just go and land in politics. I here to serve. I here to serve. And I cried. She said, you can go ahead and do it if you want. And I had to ring everybody up because I was in DPP's office and I'd already told people I'll leave. And in fact, I think I had started packing, because I was ready to move on. I turned 25. It was in 1992. Actually, no, I hadn't joined DPP. It was 92. And I was working to Norberg Guinness and Company. I hadn't joined DPP yet. And I remember a friend of mine said, she said, but didn't you want to be in the DPP's office? I said, yeah, but politics come first. I'll go in. And Rajiv and to the person who asked the question, is it Navia asked the question, and I had to ring up everybody and say, oh, I'm not going again, because the point that was made to me was you have to go out and establish yourself. It's established not in terms of make money, but go and give service. You're going to serve the people, but how are you serving? Go and get those skills. You see, young people have to develop skills. When you go into politics, you're going to see money like you never saw before. You have to make sure you're not corrupt. You're going to get power like you never had power before. You have to make sure that doesn't go to your head and make you a monster. So you have to develop those skills first, and then you will be seen. Form a lobby group. Do you know, before I went into politics, I had my own little lobby group going, a lobby group, not a political group. Get active in things. Remember, I told you I used to write. I had a TV show. That's how I got, serve, so that when you go into politics, you're able to show a track record.
Thank you. Justice Lucky, it just is left for me to express on behalf of the Faculty of Law and the Law Association Trinidad our immense thanks for your taking your time to come and to impart to the young persons all this important information. I have to tell you, I learned a few things about you today that I didn't know about, and it was truly inspiring. And I think one of the points I must make is that this is the first in the projects that we are collaborating with the Faculty of Law, and I want to make it clear that mentorship is an issue that we appreciate as important. And so I can say to you that one of the projects that we are working with the Faculty of Law on, and it's almost there, is a mentorship program. We have already identified the mentors. We've already gotten approval of most of them. So we are hoping in the not too distant future to roll out a collaborative effort where we will have members of the bar, very well-known, established, experienced mentors in the legal profession, making themselves available to the members of the Faculty of Law. And not only in the Faculty of Law, but as you move through the years of training and you become young professionals in the legal profession, the Law Association is also working on a mentorship program with a view that once you come out into practice, depending on the area you want to practice, you could be assigned to a mentor in that area so that you can do it. There's too many lawyers in relation to those in terms of the chambers that we have and the firm, because the reality is that we don't have enough law chambers that really is out there to provide that mentorship. So we're trying to fill that gap. So today's program is just the first stepping stone. It was such a pleasure to have you, Justice of Appeal Lucky. We thank you.
Thank you very much.
And we look forward to having further collaborations between the Law Association and the Faculty of Law. Can I tell everyone have a very safe and wonderful evening, and we look forward to you all joining us in further projects that that we will be doing in the not too distant future. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And again, to the faculty and to you, Mr. Prasad, and to the Dean and everyone who made this afternoon possible. I know it is a lovely rainy afternoon. For those who the rain doesn't affect with flooding, and there were many things people could have done, including cuddle up in their beds, and they didn't, or if they did, they still listened. So thank you very much again.
Thank you.